Hi guys, Dr. Mel. We're busy with physics and work, and we are now going to apply the theorem of energy and work to conservation of mechanical energy. And remember, you've done mechanical energy in grade 10, where you actually did the definition and the conservation of mechanical energy. So, mechanical energy is the sum, so I'm going to add things together of gravitational potential energy. So you know that's the potential energy there, and it's added to the kinetic energy, which we've got here. And if you have a look on your information sheet, you'll see that the potential energy has got to do with the height and the kinetic energy with the velocity. So if I add those two quantities together, I get the mechanical energy. And that's the definition for mechanical energy. As in all the other cases, the energy will be measured in joule and it's a scalar quantity. So, what's the conservation of mechanical energy? Well, the conservation is that it's conserved, it's kept, it will be the same. The total mechanical energy, or the sum of the gravitational and the kinetic energy in an isolated system, will remain constant. So what we can say is that the mechanical energy at point A will be exactly the same as the mechanical energy at point B, will be exactly the same as the mechanical energy at point C. And we know the mechanical energy on itself is the sum of the potential plus the kinetic. So you can do that exactly for each of these, although you'll know there will be a difference in the potential of, let's say, in this case, the three A, B, and C positions. It will be added with the kinetic and give you exactly the same answer. But the one condition that we cannot forget, it has to be in an isolated system. And an isolated system means there's no influence from the environment. And in this case, no external forces. It's only, for instance, gravity that is there, and that is zero in this case. No external forces will mean it's isolated. We have to go back to the previous lesson where we actually discussed conservative forces and non-conservative forces. Non-conservative forces will be the forces like the applied force or the frictional force or the tension in a string. Those do not conserve energy. Now, the applied force can be a pushing, a pulling, a motor. Those will be non-conservative. They will not conserve energy. There will be a loss of the transferred energy. Let's just go to the table. If you do remember, in the previous lesson, we also did this table. Conserve, that's where our focus lies. Conserving energy will be done by conservative forces, and those will be gravitational force, which we're doing in this section. But it can also be the forces that we did when we did Coulomb's law, which is the electrostatic forces, or the forces that we did in Newton's laws, where we had the T for forces in springs. Remember, this is a spring, which means it is energy within that spring or an elastic. The gravitational force does not depend on the path. You know there's only one direction for gravitational forces, and that's downward. So it's not dependable on the path, and the work and the energy is conserved. So it's kept within that system. On the other hand, we've got non-conservative forces. They do not conserve, and as we said just now, it's all the applied forces, friction, and the tension in strings. It does depend on the path. So it's important here, the path is important, and there's not a conservation of energy. So you'll see we are going to derive a new equation now to give us an idea how to calculate with non-conservative forces. Let's go back. When we've got conservative forces, we actually have the gravitational force. Can you see we're working with gravitational force in all three of these cases? And in this one, we've got applied forces and frictional forces. So this is the work done with non-conservative, and this is the work done by conservative forces. Let's go back to our work energy theorem. We said the work will be exactly the same. The net work will be the same as the conservative work plus the non-conservative work. So we can actually say all the forces, those who have conservative, which means something like gravity, and the non-conservative, the friction, the applied forces. If you add them together, you get the network. And the network, we said when we did our theorem, is equal to the change in kinetic energy. Now let's take this equation and we can substitute now. The net there, you can substitute with the kinetic energy. So I can say the change in kinetic energy is equal to the work done by the conservative forces and the work done by the non-conservative forces. And if we now change this equation to have the non-conservative forces on this side, you see we'll deduct the work done by the conservative forces to get the kinetic energy. So it's just a little bit of a manipulation. We started off, I'm going to do this again so that you can see. We started off to say the net will be the conservative plus the non-conservative. But we know we've got the net as equal to the change in kinetic energy. I then went and substituted that into that equation, that the change in kinetic energy is equal to those two. And then I took the conservative work to that side to say the non-conservative work is the kinetic energy minus the conservative. And I'm naming this equation 1, and you'll see why I'm doing that. If I move on, we can go back to our initial calculation where we said the work done by the gravitational force is the gravitational force times the displacement, and we know now this can be a value of either 0 or 180 degrees. If we've got gravitational force, we know it's always pulling downwards, and if we lift something to a height of that, the angle between this, the applied force upwards, and the gravitational force downwards will be a value of 180 degrees. Therefore, I can say mg, which is the force of the gravitation, times cos theta, which in this case is 180, times the height. I actually displaced that. Do you see the displacement there? I actually substituted the delta x with delta y, which is h. Now, can you see we actually have in this equation m, g, and h, and that's equal to delta EP. Now, remember, we've got minus 1, therefore, do you see my minus there? I can thus say the conservative forces is equal to minus the change in potential energy. Now let's go back to our previous equation where we had equation 1, where we had a conservative force work there, and now we've got equation 2. And I'm now going to do a little bit of simultaneous equations. If it's an isolated system and there's no external forces, we know the non-conservative forces have no energy used. I can go back to my equation now and say then it's the kinetic energy minus WC, which is equal to minus the delta EP. You will then get a new equation which says the non-conservative work is equal to the kinetic energy, and it's the change, so you see it's delta, plus the potential energy, and you also see it's at the change. Now, what I've done now, you don't have to be able to do. You will need to know that you get this equation on your information sheet when are you going to use this equation? I'm going to quickly go back. You get one equation that looks like that one. You've got another equation that looks like that one. So you need to know, when do I use which equation? So if they give you height, you immediately know you've got to use potential energy. And if they ask you or give you velocity, you know you've got to use kinetic energy. So this equation is on your information sheet. Make sure that you know that the external forces, let's say for instance a frictional force or an applied force, you can just add the kinetic energies change. That will be a final minus the initial, and exactly the same with the potential energy. Let's have a look at it. The work done with non-conservative forces will be a half mvf square minus a half mvi square. And that, guys, you have to add to mgh final minus mgh initial. Make sure that you deduct this because you're getting the delta EK, and you deduct this because you're getting delta EP. So make sure that you get the right values. In the absence of a non-conservative force, that's in the absence of friction, the mechanical energy, what we said in grade 10, will be conserved. And then the work done by this non-conservative forces is that. So when it's work done by a conservative force, we know that the mechanical energy will be conserved. So make a point of knowing which forces will be conserving forces and which are the non-conserving forces. Let's have a look at an indication of how to apply these equations. Susan is riding a bicycle. A constant speed she has of 10 on a horizontal surface. She reaches point D. Now, in this diagram, it seems like she came from this side and she's reaching point D, and she's got a velocity of 10, which was a constant. So she had 10 there and she had 10 here, and she's coming to point D. Can you see the point D there? She reaches this point of a slope, and the slope has a height. That height there is 1.5 meters. She freewheels to the top because she has velocity at the bottom. She just goes up to the top, freeing without pedaling, without using more energy. She just uses the work that she has already, and she experiences a constant force of 20. So going up the slope, the only force that's going in this direction is the friction, and you know it's actually going down. So she's going up, but she's not pedaling, so there's no force going that route. There's no force upward. It will be the friction that's pulling her down and making her probably stop. And they give me the mass of Susan and the bicycle. They will ask of me questions. Firstly, they ask of me, identify all the forces and calculate the work done. Secondly, determine the velocity when she reaches the top of the slope. And then finally, a question about the mechanical energy. Was it conserved or not? Now let's get to identifying the forces. What we see here is that Susan had a velocity there. She went up the slope and we had friction downward. But she also had a mass. And because she had a mass, there would be a gravitational force. So if I had to draw a free body diagram, I would say there's a frictional force that side. We know there's a gravitational force that way. And we know there's a normal force that way. We know we can substitute the gravitational force with two substitute components, which will be the FG parallel and the FG perpendicular. So make sure that you know which forces are you using. Let's go and do the calculations in order for us to do the calculations to find the work. I'm firstly going to take the mass. I know the mass is 60 kilogram. I'm going to say the Fg will thus be 60 times 9.8, which gives me a value of 588 Newton. I now want to get the two components. I'm only going to use one, but I always find the two. This one will be 588 times, remember which one you're going to use? Cos, and they told me the angle was, no, they didn't give me the angle. This one, on the other hand, will be 588 sine the angle. Now, what are we going to do? We didn't get the angle. Well, they gave me the following. They said that is an 8-meter slope, and I know this height is 1.5. So you can calculate that angle if you want to, or you can say sine of this angle is, remember, the opposite over the hypotenuse, which is 1.5 over the value of 8. So I'm going to use that relationship in this equation. So it's 588 times sine theta. And I'm going to substitute it with 1.5 over 8. Now, if you take 1.5 over 8, you'll get a value that you can use. It is in actual fact 0.1875. So I didn't need the angle at that stage because I had two sides from which I could deduce the value. Let's go along and see if we can get to the work done. So what I've done now, I've calculated this force of the perpendicular and the parallel. I'm using the parallel. I'm again going to write it down. I said it is 588 times 1.5 over 8, which gives me a value of, I'm going to do it just to give you time to do it with me. And can you see we find a value of 110.25 newtons. That's the one force of the weight that she has pulling her down. We also know we had gravity. So the gravity was going upwards and she was going upwards, sorry. She was going upwards. Gravity will also be going downwards. And they actually said to me, the gravity is 20 newtons. So we have the force downwards as 110, and we've got the friction also downwards. So in actual fact, we've got both of these forces going downward, and they wanted to know what's the work done by this. Now we can do it two ways. We can either work with the friction times cos times delta x, and we can just use the friction. Can you see? I know that is cos 180 times the 8. I'll then get an answer of minus 160 joules. Let's do the same calculation with the force, the parallel force. Again, the same values. We've got 110.25. We know that was also 180 degrees from the movement. So I've got cos 180 and it is times 8. And you now get a value of 882 joules. Now in actual fact, both of them are negative because both of them are working downwards. They wanted me to work out the work, and I've calculated the work done by the separate forces, and that should give you all your marks. So that's very important that we calculated that. The second question said to you, what is the velocity at which Susan reaches the top of the slope? So you see the top of the slope, it immediately tells you you're going to use the potential energy, and when it's velocity, you're going to use the kinetic energy. I'm going to go to this equation, which is the work energy theorem. I'm going to say it's delta EK. I have the delta, can you see here? I've got the two work already. So I've got this value here. I'm going to add them together. Let's quickly see if we can put them here. It will be minus 882, which is the one value we got, plus minus 160, which was the frictional force, and that gave me a value of minus 1042 joule. This side, I've got half mvf squared minus half mvf squared. And, no, sorry, this is I, sorry. And I can now complete this equation. I know the mass was 60. I need to find the final velocity. And I know at the bottom, at point D, her velocity was 10. And remember your square. If you now go and calculate these values, you will find that you get values like this, and you've got minus 142 this side. I then went and I said VF square is equal to 65.27. I then went and got the square root for each of these, and my answer is VF, and it's 8.079 meter per second. And guys, it's velocity, so it is up the hill, upward, or to the left, or to the right, whichever direction. If they ask you the speed, you can leave out the direction because it's a scalar. Finally, we've worked out the velocity. So at the top, she's got a velocity of, let's just see, 8.079. And at the bottom, she had a velocity of 10. Now, I just want to show you, she actually went slower. Can you see? She went from 10 to 8. And it makes sense because gravity was pulling her down as well as the frictional force. You need to see the logistics and all the logic around this. The logistics is you need to see what values do I have here, which is the values I had there. And then you've got to compare your answer and see, is this logic? Does it make sense? Is this answer smaller than that one? In the final instance, they're asking me a question. Was the mechanical energy conserved? Now, you can just say no or yes, and you'll get 1 or 2 marks, but you actually have to prove this. Now, remember, we said mechanical energy at the point A will be the potential energy plus the kinetic energy. And we said mechanical energy at point B will be the potential energy plus the kinetic energy. Let's see. You already know the answer because you have the velocities. But let's go and calculate. Let's say right at the top, we've got the mgh plus half mvf squared. Let's substitute that with values. We know it was at the 1.5 meter height, and we know now what the velocity is because we calculated that value. And if you calculate this value plus that value, you'll get an answer of 2840.592 joules. So it's 2840.6 joules at the top. Let's see what it was at the bottom. Well, at the bottom, we had the potential plus the kinetic energy. You know it was on the ground, so the h is 0. And you know the velocity was 10 meter per second. And if you now calculate the energy, you'll see the energy to be 3,000 joules. So you had at the bottom 3,000 joule energy calculated. So Susan on her bike there at the bottom had 3,000 joules energy, and when she reached the top, she had 2,840.6 joule. And can you see now there was a loss of energy? So the question was it conserved? And you can say no, because there's energy lost, or you can say the mechanical energy at the top is not equal to the mechanical energy at the bottom or at point D. So make sure that you answer and motivate your answer well so that you can get all your marks. Let's quickly see. Do you know the definition of the work energy theorem? Guys, make sure you've got the work net is equal to delta EK, and you now have the work net is equal to delta EK plus delta EP. Make sure that you know which of those you are going to use and what's the relationship with the mechanical energy. Make sure that you work with the correct components of the energy. If they ask you about the one force, let's say for instance friction, or they want to know about gravitation, make sure that you are using the correct values. I hope you enjoy working with the work theorem. It's difficult work. I know it's challenging. Practice these and see that you do an accurate free body diagram. Otherwise, you are going to have a struggle identifying the right forces. Enjoy. Bye.